Okay, students, so we covered number one as far as the tide classes go. Now we're going to be getting into number two. So we talked about, again, to sum up a couple of things, we talked about the rise and the fall of the tides. And we said that currents are moved this way, okay, and that's lateral, and the tides move horizontally. They go up, and it's called flood tide coming in, and then it stops at the top again, and that's called slack tide, and then it goes back out, and that's called an ebbing tide, and it stops in the bottom, and that's called slack tides. And again, there is four tide changes each day. There's 2 high tides and 2 low tides. We're going to talk about the causes of those tides in a little while. But one thing we ended up with is low tide. We talked about that. Now, tides also have a huge amount of force, you know, because when the tide goes out and is really ebbing strongly, it creates big, strong currents, some that can travel up to 24 miles an hour, which is way faster than a horse or a person could run. No one could possibly swim against some of the tides that there are, and they're really dangerous and create whirlpools and other things. Now, we've learned to harness some of that energy, like we harness the sun now, and we wind up having solar, which creates electricity. Now we're going to be talking a little bit about the strength of some of the currents and how we're now harnessing that to create electricity also. Okay, so let's take a look at one of the videos that shows some of the tidal changes, okay? Now you can see here, how fast this current is running. Now this is a jet ski, and when there's generally a big current, it forms what's called a tidal bore, or actually big waves, and you're going to see the jet ski riding these waves. This is all the tide just ripping out. Again, the tide is going down, so the current is sucking out. And you can see the jet ski is riding these waves. This current is just going so fast. You could see there's no way you could swim against this. It's just really racing. And this jet ski's having a good time, but actually somebody swimming or even trying to row or a small boat could never go against this current. It's so strong. Okay, so what we could see in those two videos is how strong the currents are, how they rip. Well, a lot of times currents go in different directions, and when they rub up against each other, they can cause whirlpools. Whirlpools can be extremely dangerous, mostly for people. In all of my years on the ocean, I've never seen a whirlpool that I would consider really dangerous to humans. But I think they're interested in explore because it does show the huge strength of the ocean and the different tidal currents.
What happens if a ship falls into a big whirlpool? Whirlpools, how dangerous can they be? How deadly are they for human beings? How destructive are they for vessels? Can whirlpools suck ships, boats, or even barges in? Or do they pose a danger only for human beings who fall into them? In these shots, you can see how the rafter Steve Fisher got sucked in by a powerful current that the athlete had the bad luck to encounter when descending the Congo River as part of a Red Bull-sponsored competition. Fisher, a world-class athlete, had a run-in with the mighty rapids of this African river, yet this was not among the most dangerous whirlpools that exist on our planet, and far from the most dangerous whirlpools that are theoretically possible. Don't try at home what one of the world's top rafting pros barely managed to escape from. That was even with the help of others. There are whirlpools much more dangerous than along the Congo River. Some of these vortexes in the water pose a threat not only to people, but even heavier objects. A boat, a yacht, a ship, a barge, even giant vessels can face destruction if any of them separately or together, are sucked into one of these real aquatic monsters. But let's start by taking a look at whirlpools themselves, at what they are, how they arise, and what real danger and destructive force they pose. No, not like that. Whirlpools are not specially stirred up by anyone. Rather, they form on their own due to internal processes. Currents in a body of water collide and merge, and thereby they create circular flows that are made stronger by the turbulence, as if the water is being turned inward. If there is a deep hole under the water, and above this hole tons of water are flowing from opposite directions towards each other, a vortex is created. And this is what a whirlpool actually is. Let's try to helpfully illustrate this principle with, oddly enough, a clockwork mechanism. As we explain, you'll understand why we chose precisely this as an example. You can see how the tireless little gears in the clockwork mechanism drive one another on by rotating, as they constantly grip on one another with their teeth. Each of these gears rotates only because the entire ensemble rotates together. They're never slowed down by friction against one another, but rather they work together in.
Okay, students, as you can see, the huge current that's created from the tidal changes. Now, we're starting to harness around the world the currents with like windmills, but they're not windmills, they're water mills. They're actually on the bottom of the ocean, and as the currents run by, it spins these. And here's an example of one here. And if you look really closely, you can see down in the bottom here, there's a shark in the picture. And again, these are on the bottom of the ocean. In many places, they're becoming more and more available in different parts of the world. And because the tides are very predictable, they'll come in and out, as we said, and this will turn and spin as the current goes in and out. So anyway, it works really well. And you know, this is one of the forces that happens. And then here's another example of another water mill, and you could see the fish next to this. So again, as winds change, and winds may or may not occur to, you know, blow wind turbines, we know that the tides are going to go in and out all day long. They're going to change. As we said, there's going to be 4 tidal changes each day, with 2 low tides and 2 high tides. So this is also a thing. Now, when these spin, it creates this turbine turns. Now, normally this would be powered by steam, which would be blowing heat, which would come and power steam. But in this case, this is spun by the water. And as this spins, it creates a magnetic field with coils. Now there's windings on this, and it's kind of like a generator. And we're not going to go into too much detail, although electricity is very interesting. And it's created in part by a magnetic field, and like a starter on a car works kind of on the same principle, or a generator on a car, an alternator on a car. All of these things are done by spinning, and the magnetic field is created that generates electricity. And the electricity comes off, and the electricity goes through power lines. And generally, if you look up in the power lines, you're going to see one line that's separated here that's a positive, and one that's a negative or a ground. And these travel along the wires and come into our homes. And some things conduct electricity. Some of the things that are good conductors can be scissors, paper clips, aluminum foils, iron, steel, and copper wire. And one of the good or bad things is one of the other conductors is us. So electricity can go through us and can actually stop our heart from beating. So we have to be really careful, because we don't want to wind up like this, okay? So we're going to stop for now, and the next class we're going to deal with is going to be, again, we're going to be talking about what creates the currents and tides that we've taken a look at today. So we'll see you next time, and thank you so much, students.